Welcome to the NGConnects Podcast, where national Gypsum team members and industry leaders share insights and advice to solve construction and design challenges. We obsess over the details to help you build better. Hi, my name is Chris Whitmire. I'm with the marketing department at National Gypsum Company. Joining me today is Sam Halverson, and we're going to discuss area separation walls. Sam, welcome to the show. Sam Halverson is a manager at National Gypsum Company's Construction Services Department. In addition to the guidance and instruction he provides through the 1-800-NATIONAL technical hotline, Sam is also responsible for systems testing and is the creator of multiple highly regarded technical resources such as the Purple Book, the Sound Book, and the Wood Book. After receiving a Bachelor of Architecture degree from UNC Charlotte, Sam worked as an architect for 15 years prior to joining the National Gypsum team. And Sam, glad you're here with us today.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to be here.
So, area separation walls. I know this is a topic that you get a lot of phone calls.
Topic. Yeah, I get multiple calls weekly about area separation walls.
So what is the purpose of the area separation wall? What function does it serve?
So area separation walls are fire-rated vertical, wall assemblies. But what separates them from other fire-rated walls is they are continuous from the foundation of the building all the way up to the roof and sometimes beyond.
All continuous, right?
Completely continuous. And they are designed in such a way that the two buildings on either side of the area separation wall are structurally independent. So in a fire event, if one of the buildings happens to fall away, the other building is still intact, and the firewall, the area separation wall, stays in place for the assigned fire rating for the assigned time, 2 hours.
So they're extremely important.
They are very important.
Okay, great. So let's get into the building types. Where does one typically see an area separation wall, or where are they? What types of buildings are area separation walls most utilized in?
So any building type that requires a firewall technically could utilize the area separation wall system, but they're mostly used in wood frame building types, usually residential, whether they're apartment buildings or townhomes, condos, things like that.
I'm a contractor, and I'm calling you, and I want to know about how these walls are constructed. Just kind of break that down. What are the components of the area separation wall? I know there's several different components, but just kind of walk us through what those components are and just the
Sure.
general construction of how these things are put together.
Great question. So one can think of the area separation wall system as 3 walls. There's the central wall, which is the firewall itself, and then 2 flanking walls. So the central firewall consists of 2 1-inch thick shaft liner panels, friction fit between 2-inch H studs, which are spaced 24 inches on center. Then on each side of the H stud system with the shaft liner panels is a flanking wall. Can be wood or metal studs, but it's usually wood. And those rows of wood studs are separated from the firewall itself by a 3/4-inch airspace.
Okay.
Then to complete the assembly, just a layer of 1/2-inch gypsum board is applied on the interior face of those wood studs to serve as the finished side of the unit.
So the H studs that are used in the assembly, those are metal, right?
That's right. I did leave out one key component. So the H studs, the function of the flanking walls is to provide support for that area separation wall in the middle. That each of the H studs is clipped off with aluminum clips that support the wall. And the clips melt at 1,000 degrees, which is low in a fire event. So they melt first if the building happens to fall away. That way they leave the firewall intact, and it's supported by the clips on the other side. So it's duly supported.
Okay. And the shaft wall liner that goes into those H studs, it's friction fit, right? They're not attached.
That's
They're
right.
not with fasteners. It's all friction fit, right?
That's correct. They'll apply the bottom track to the foundation, and then they'll start with a vertical C runner and screw it to the track, and then they just friction fit 2 liner panels, then an H stud, 2 more liner panels, and an H stud all the way down the run. It's built progressively.
Okay. What do you do? And I'm sure you've had these questions before. How do you answer when someone calls and says, I put my area separation wall up, but I forgot about the flanking walls or the 3/4 inch airspace, or I forgot I needed to put the 3/4 inch airspace in. Maybe they put the flanking walls up, but missed the part about the 3/4 inch airspace. What direction or guidance? Hopefully, hopefully
There's
contractors don't run into that, but I'm sure you've gotten that question. And what's the guidance you provide contractors if you run into that scenario?
Sure. So the 3/4 inch airspace is critical because that's what really separates the wood framing from the hot metal that constitutes the H stud. Heat's going to go right through that, so that 3/4 inch airspace, you know, breaks that thermal transmission. If it's impinged upon, if there's a 1/2 inch or at least 5/8 amount of space, then you can put in over the H studs that are being impinged upon with 1/2 inch Type C or 5/8 Type X gypsum board.
So
There is a fix, but
okay.
if you can't get the gypsum board in there, then
You
you
got to
might
take the
have to
wall down.
knock a few studs out and replace those studs, hopefully. But
And you've gotten those questions before, haven't you?
oh yeah, there's many types of damage, I guess you could say, that occurs to area separation walls. So some of the things we have solutions to, but not everything. Sometimes there's just too many mistakes, or it's we can't stand behind. But for minor imperfections, we can usually provide a fix.
Well,
Patching methods for holes, for example, or a lot of times because it's built progressively and the liner panels are friction fit in the studs, the flange of those studs can have a tendency sometimes to shear off the face paper, maybe in the corners, or corners get busted. So for things like that, they could probably just be repaired with setting type compound.
okay.
In the case of paper coming off or small dings and dents.
Bottom line is remember the 3/4 inch airspace and remember those flanking walls. And for whatever reason, if you do forget to do that, call Sam at 1-800-NATIONAL. He'll help you as best he can.
I'll
So
try.
good advice, Sam. So these area separation walls have a 2-hour fire rating, right? What about 3-hour? Is there such a thing as a 3-hour fire rated
Sure.
area separation wall?
Yes, firewalls have a minimum fire rating of 2 hours. Uh, but what we find is, especially in the case of residential construction, the industry term is what's called podium construction. And what this allows you to do, it's a code caveat that basically allows you to take your 5-story tall wood frame building and set it on top of a concrete podium that can serve either as a parking structure or can accommodate restaurants and retail, things like that below the residential portion of the building.
Seems like every new building in Charlotte is podium construction.
It's
The
very common. Yep.
retail space on the bottom,
With new urban design trends,
it's
it's very
popular.
popular. So what you have to do here in these cases is for fire resistance, they make you separate that wood 5-story residential building from the occupancies below by a 3-hour rating, which is typically a concrete slab of some sort. And then above that, your area separation walls that would normally be separating your units with a 2-hour rating would now have to be a 3-hour rating.
You just mentioned something, heights. Is there a limiting number of levels that you can take an area separation wall? Is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the area separation wall, when it was tested for fire resistance, there was an applied load um, on the structural frame, putting pressure on the wall itself. And the purpose of that is to simulate a load of the wall stacked up on top of itself up 5 or 6 stories. So the 2-hour area separation wall has been tested, can span vertically 66 feet.
Okay.
And the 3-hour area separation wall can go 70 feet.
Is that I'm sure that's code.
That's
Is code different in different parts of the country, or is
that's
that
in,
the way it is across the whole United States?
that is the rule in the International Building Code, which all state codes or most state codes are either an adoption of the IBC or an amended version of the IBC. As far as I know, they're universal. There might be small pockets of the country that have different rules, but I'm not aware of them.
Well, in some markets, I think we've learned too, some markets are a little bit more stringent on code compliance than others. Maybe if a rural area, maybe they're not looking at some of those things maybe as closely as, Charlotte or New York City or
Sure.
Boston. Right? Is that safe to say?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Fire blocking. What kind of code requirements are around fire blocking on these area separation walls?
Good question. So fire blocking is an issue that we're constantly questioned on because people don't really understand what it is. It's not part of the fire rated assembly itself. It's a separate code requirement that states if you have a concealed space that connects one floor from another, you have to block it off in some manner to prevent the passage of flame. So obviously, this is inherently part of the area separation wall system because you have a 3/4 inch airspace that continues from your foundation all the way up to your roof. So, with your floor and ceiling lines, the code has a list of approved materials that you can use as fire blocking. But in the air separation wall, we specifically want either gypsum board, typically the 1 inch shaft liners will be friction fit. They'll provide a 1 inch airspace instead of the minimum 3/4, and use shaft liner panels as fire blocking at the floor and ceiling lines. Alternatively, they could stuff mineral wool insulation in that 3/4 inch airspace, and that's also acceptable for fire blocking.
How about the flanking when you get to that roof line? Don't you have to have either fire resistant plywood or
Yeah, there's
4 feet on each side?
yes. So that's in some cases. So the rules about the continuity of the firewall at the roof stipulate that the wall has to extend. I believe it's 18 inches above the roof. Um, which, if you think about it, if you can think about those old apartment buildings where they have the brick walls and the brick
Yeah.
walls stick up about 18 inches
Yeah.
above the roof, that's why it's the code requirement to keep fire from going over the wall.
Okay.
So the area separation wall has to do the same thing, but the code does allow you a couple of exceptions. You can stop uh, the firewall at the underside of the roof sheathing itself, provided the roof sheathing is fire resistance treated plywood for 4 feet on either side of the wall.
Well, we can't forget about our good friends on the MEP side of things. Plumbing, mechanical. How does that work for an area separation wall assembly?
Okay, so this question typically comes up in regards to townhouse construction. So in a townhouse, if you and your neighbor um, have two separate fire rated walls, they're typically 1 hour each, um, then you can have plumbing in those walls because there's no physical.
And that's in that flanking space that we talked about,
Well,
right?
this is just in general. This is not even related to area separation walls. So if you have two
Okay.
walls, you're allowed to have plumbing in it. If you have a single wall that's 2 hour rated, but it's shared by both units, you cannot have mechanical and plumbing in the shared wall. So with the area separation wall, remember it's 3 walls. So there is no plumbing and mechanical in the shared portion, the fire rated portion that's continuous from the foundation to the roof. But there is the two flanking walls on either side do allow for plumbing and mechanical. Because also if you think about it, they're designed so that those could fall away.
Right.
So it does, and the firewall is still intact. So it doesn't really matter whether they had plumbing in them or not if they're not part of the assembly.
What about doors?
Doors are a tricky thing.
So you can put doors?
You can put doors in firewalls. The problem,
Can you put them in an area separation wall?
I can.
You a contractor now?
The difficulty with designing an area separation wall with doors in it is that it has nothing to do with the fire rating. It's that you don't want to compromise that structural independence from one side or the other. The door frame cannot, say, encapsulate those two flanking walls, because if one building falls down, it'll pull down the door frame.
Right.
You have a hole in your wall if your wall is still there. So we've designed a method in our wood book for attaching fire-rated doors into the area separation wall system, where it's only attached to the H-stud system, the H-stud portion of the wall.
It's got to be a fire rated door. It can't be one of these hollow core or solid
That's
core
right.
doors. It's got to be a fire rated door.
So exactly. So if there's a fire, the doors automatically close. If the building falls down on one side, those doors will still be there.
Good information, Sam, for sure. What about repairs? Again, going back to maybe a contractor
Sure.
maybe the contractor didn't put it up right. Maybe there's an issue with the MEP contractors. Maybe they did something, they penetrated the wall, which they're not supposed to.
That's a very common one. So we kind of talked about
Repairs.
We talked about surface damage a little bit. Very minor dents and dings can be repaired just by applying setting type joint compound, over the damaged area. For the compromised airspace, we discussed applying battens of type X gypsum board material over the metal studs so that they do not come in contact with the wood framing. But most often it's penetrations. It's either an electrician punched a hole in the wall temporarily to run some cords, or maybe there was I don't know. Usually it's a temporary hole for some reason that, the guys come back the next day and they have to repair. So we do have patching methods for this. It's going to require, squaring up the holes, putting a similar shaft liner material to plug those holes. And then we take 5/8 type X gypsum board and screw to the framing on each side just to hold those two plugs into place. But there's details for that also in the wood book, as well as other.
Well, that was going to be my next thing. So, obviously for the audience, if they get stuck, they can call 1-800-NATIONAL, speak with you, Mark or Jim. But you had mentioned we do have an array of repairs located in our wood book, correct?
Yep. Penetrations, full panel replacement. We have methods for both of those things. And if it's not in the wood book, as you said, most of these issues come up through our 800 national technical hotline, and so we address those on a case-by-case basis by writing a letter or providing a detail, something whatever's required to appease the authority having jurisdiction.
Well, the wood book, the purple book, the sound book, those are all just tremendous resources. I know you had a heavy hand in getting those published, and I know our folks at National, they're trusted resources within the national team, but also they're trusted resources with our external partners, contractors, architects alike. So I think that's a good point where we can wrap things up. Had a lot of great discussion today. We talked about how area separation walls are built, where area separation walls are used. You got into a lot of the details and the specifics as far as fire blocking, repairs. We talked a little bit about doors.
Yep.
And again, there's resources available. 1-800-NATIONAL. You can reach out, speak with Sam again, or Mark, or Jim. Our other three, the other two books, the purple book, the sound book, those are also available at nationalgypsum.com. Thanks for joining us today. That wraps things up. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. National Gypsum Company is the exclusive service provider of reliable, high-performance building products manufactured by its affiliate companies and marketed under the Gold Bond, Proform, and Permabase brands. The National Gypsum name has been synonymous with high-quality, innovative products and exceptional customer service since 1925. The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only. For specific building or design questions, please consult with the 1-800-NATIONAL Construction Services team or your regional National Gypsum Construction Design Manager. Always use products in accordance to the manufacturer's recommendations.